Abortion. If there weren't enough controversial issues out there in the country today, we've got a new one. It's getting queued up. It's ready to go. In fact, we're going to hear about it in front of the Supreme Court not too soon. What are we talking about? Well, it's Roe versus Wade. It's the new Supreme Court. It's the new 6-3 conservative majority now that Amy Coney Barrett has replaced Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And now a lot of people getting a little bit concerned if you are on both sides of the aisle. Many people have had a lot of issues with the current state of the abortion affairs in the United States. Supreme Court is very likely going to be weighing in on this thing soon. So let's figure out what's happening here. It's going to start with a lawsuit, and it's starting out of Mississippi, of all states. And so we're going to spend some time looking at Mississippi and seeing what's going on here. The Guardian gives us some information, some background before we dive into it. It says that Mississippi now urges the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn Roe versus Wade in an abortion case. We had the changing of the guard over at the Supreme Court. It's now 6-3. The states are ready to go. They want this issue in front of the Supreme Court. Mississippi argues that the Constitution does not support the right to abortion. The court is likely to hear the case this fall, this year, and then rule in the spring. So this is coming up, which means you got to get your get braced, my friends, because we got a whole new issue coming down the line. Republican lawmakers in several states want to challenge Roe. They want bans on abortion once the first sign of a fetal pulse is detected. It can be as early as 6 weeks. Federal judge, though, on Tuesday blocked an Arkansas law that would ban most abortions, ruling that the law is categorically unconstitutional. It says it would ban a procedure before the fetus is even considered viable. Right? Mississippi now had a 15-week law. This was enacted in 2018, but it was blocked. The state's only abortion clinic, Jackson Women's Health Organization, remains open and offers abortion 16 weeks of pregnancy. So Mississippi, it sounds like, wanted to push that from 16 weeks down to 15 weeks. And so you see what they're doing here, right? Just a small little change. 16 weeks down to 15 weeks. The question is going to be, can we put any restrictions on abortion? Can we just move it 1 week? Let's see how that works. More than 90% of abortions in the U.S. take place in the first 13 weeks. Mississippi Clinic has presented evidence that viability is impossible at 15 weeks. An appeals court said that the state conceded that it had identified no medical evidence that a fetus would be viable at 15 weeks. And so sort of a quick crash course constitutional law on this the abortion stuff. Roe versus Wade was a case that I think was judicially improper. The way that it was decided was not appropriate. Essentially, it made the court was acting like it was a legislature. The court took an issue and they crafted a resolution that they thought fit into the constitutional framework of this country. And so basically what they did through constitutional fiat is they manipulated the rules of rational basis and intermediate scrutiny and strict scrutiny and all of these constitutional analyses that we talk about in the law. And they said that for the first trimester, the state had a compelling reason, during the third trimester, the state had compelling reasons to protect that fetus, that child, because it was viable. The Supreme Court just kind of created this. They broke it up into 3 trimesters. The first trimester, the state could do a lot to allow abortions, and the states could do very little to restrict abortions. In the second trimester, sort of the scale tipped a little bit more, right? And so the government was a little bit more allowed to place reasonable restrictions. And then in the third trimester, if the government wanted to place restrictions on abortion, they had a compelling reason to do so. The child was more viable at that time, so it became more allowed to place those restrictions. Then Roe versus Wade sort of got modified by a second case called Casey versus Planned Parenthood, which sort of scrapped some of that analytical framework and said that any state law that places an undue burden on a woman's right, the ability to go achieve, achieve an abortion, but accomplish an abortion, if she was going to go and do that, and there was an undue burden that was placed by the state, that would be unconstitutional. And so now the question is becoming, is that still viable? And what is that undue burden? And can any limit be placed on abortion at all? And so Mississippi passed this law, said we're going to reduce it from 16 weeks down to 15, and we're going to see what happens. The person who is leading this out of Mississippi, her name is Attorney General Lynn Fitch. And so she posted this July 22nd saying that the national fever on abortion can break only when this court returns the abortion policy to the states. Okay, so she's making an argument that this should not be something that the courts have dictated, have mandated through their legislative type fiat, judicial fiat, with the passing of Roe versus Wade and Casey. She's saying that's not allowed. This should be going back to the states, and the states should be able to decide what is acceptable or not. She says where agreement is more common, compromise is more possible, and disagreement can be resolved at the ballot box, right? Make it a votable issue. So that's where she's coming from. She is the Attorney General out of Mississippi. You can follow her over here. And we're going to go through a couple things. She actually did an excellent job preparing all of this media stuff. And I want to show you what she did. So when you go through the press release, she has all of this prepared for you. So at the bottom of the press release, there's a button that says click here, a link. It's going to give you access to everything. She's got 4 videos she recorded, which are just ready and available for you. She's also got a bio that's ready for you and 2 headshots over here, okay, ready to go for you. And then she also provided, of course, a full copy of the brief and all of the other documents. So if you want to go check all of that out, you certainly can. The links are in our slides, which are available on Locals. Now, this is the press release. So this is what she came out with and posted. She said, today, in the case of Debbs versus Jackson Health Organization, so it's the abortion clinic, I believe, versus Debbs. We'll see who this is. Mississippi Attorney General Lynn Fitch filed her brief to the Supreme Court defending the right of the people to pass laws that protect life and women's health and address legitimate interests of the state. Okay. So let's see what else is going on here. We saw that. Here is how she explains it. This is from one of the videos in her media packet.
This is about the right of the people to speak to their elected leaders on legitimate interests, including protecting vulnerable life and women's health. When the Supreme Court ruled in Roe in 1973, the court was clear that the right to terminate pregnancy is not absolute. The decision, and those after it, left far more questions than answers. However, the court was, and is clear, that the people may still act to protect legitimate interests such as the potentiality of life and women's health. The Mississippi legislature enacted this law consistent with the will of the people to do just that, promote women's health and preserve the dignity and sanctity of life.
All right. So, there's her perspective. And she's saying that, the people of her state voted for this thing and she wants the Supreme Court to rule on it. So let's go back to her press release and see what else is going on in here. She says, there are those of us that would like to have this issue settled once and for all. All it did, Roe versus Wade, was establish a special rules regime for abortion jurisprudence. It's left the cases out of step with the other courts' proceedings. State legislatures, she says, and the public have lacked clarity in passing laws to protect these legitimate public interests. It's time for the court to set this right and give this back to the states. As noted, she says that the discord that was established by the prior abortion cases made matters worse, said that they want to improve upon Roe by replacing the strict scrutiny standard with the undue burden standard. That was done in Casey. That standard too defeats also other state interests. Okay, so here is the header from the case that was filed in the Supreme Court, and this is Thomas Debbs. So this is a doctor here with the Mississippi Department of Health, state health officer, versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. So they're the respondents. This has been granted. It's coming up from the 5th Circuit. It's going to be heard in the U.S. Supreme Court. And the main question that they're asking is this: whether all pre-viability prohibitions on elective abortions are unconstitutional. All of them, right? And these can take many different forms. These are, sort of the waiting periods. If a woman goes into an abortion clinic and they say, well, we can do the abortion for you, but you have to wait 3 days, come back in 3 days. That's kind of a burden, isn't it? According to one side of the argument, it is, right? There are people who essentially want abortion on demand. You show up there, boom, it's done. So if that is delaying the abortion, well, then that might cause somebody to think more about it, and it might, provide an opportunity for them to be dissuaded from making that decision. And so many people see that as a burden. Also, have been different rules where they will say, we're gonna make you watch an ultrasound, where we're gonna ultrasound your womb, and before you go in there and conduct that thing, we're gonna show you what's going on. And courts have said that all of that is burdensome. It's trying to dissuade a woman from exercising that decision. And so the question is sort of about that. Are all pre-viability prohibitions on elective abortions unconstitutional? And so this doesn't say sort of burdens, but it's talking about prohibitions. And so we're going to see how expansive that is. Let's take a look. This is the brief that came from Attorney General Fitch. Says, on a sound understanding of the Constitution, the answer to the question presented in this case is clear, and the path to that answer is straight. Under the Constitution, may a state prohibit elective abortions before viability? Before viability, right? Before the child could live on its own. She says yes. Why? Because nothing in the Constitution, nothing in the text, the structure, the tradition supports a right to abortion. A prohibition on elective abortions is therefore constitutional, as long as it satisfies the rational basis review that applies to all laws. Okay, so you see what's happening here. We talk about these different layers of constitutional scrutiny. Strict scrutiny is the highest. They want to drop this all the way down to the bottom. So this would say that a state, if they want to put any restriction on abortion that has a rational basis, that's the standard that they want, which would basically mean a state could entirely eliminate it if they wanted to, if they voted on that. She says that that's appropriate. She says this case is made hard only because Roe versus Wade and Casey hold that the Constitution protects a right to abortion. She's saying, no, it doesn't. Right? So she wants those overturned. Under those cases, a state law restricting abortion may not pose an undue burden. Before viability, this court has said a state may not maintain a prohibition of abortion, despite the state's important interest in protecting an unborn life and women's health. So they're saying that we have such strong interest in having another human being be born in our state. And we also have a tremendous amount of interest in maintaining a woman's health, that both of those satisfy the court's pre-Roe underpinnings, or even the Roe underpinnings. In other words, the justification for why Roe versus Wade and why Planned Parenthood versus Casey ever made it, we can also sort of reach the same justifications of protecting an unborn life and women's health by reducing the standard down. All right, so both courts below understand that these cases require them to strike down the Gestational Age Act, which prohibits abortion after 15 weeks. Roe and Casey are thus at odds with the straightforward, constitutionally grounded answer. This court should overrule those decisions. The stare decisis case for overruling Roe and Casey is overwhelming. So she wants a total throwing out of Roe, which, my goodness. Can you imagine what that's going to do to people in this country? It's going to be a spicy one, isn't it? All right, so she carries on. She says, the brief continues, the only workable approach to accommodating the competing interests is to return the matter to the legislatures, to send this back to the states. We want the court to affirm the right of the people to protect their legitimate interests and give us some clarity. In 50 years since Roe, science and society have marched forward. During this time, the viability marker has moved from 28 weeks to 22 weeks in some cases, and science will only continue to advance. So it's once it's viable, then that's changing. And she's saying, can we make any restrictions pre-viability? Court, let us know. Legislatures should be able to respond to that. As part of her media package, she gave us different arguments that she's going to be making. And she tells us on page 10 of her brief in the Supreme Court, she says that the argument is the court should hold a state may prohibit elective abortions because there's a rational basis for it. She says the Mississippi Act also furthers the interest of protecting unborn life and women's health and the medical profession's integrity. So she's saying that the same reasons that were being used to justify the allowance of abortion can be met with the limitations on abortion. So we're getting to the same endpoint of protecting medical integrity, of protecting women's health, and of protecting unborn life. We're achieving all of those. Rational basis review is not applied to abortion laws because the precedents have raised the scrutiny, but the court should overrule those precedents and drop it back down from strict scrutiny down to rational basis review. The court should reject the viability as a barrier to prohibiting elective abortions and reject the judgment below. So get rid of the viability question at all. As long as it has a rational basis to anything. If a court says, if a legislature says we've got a basis for this thing, it should be allowed. She continues, she says, a lot has changed in 5 decades. In 1973, there was little support for women who wanted a full family life and a successful career. Maternity leave was rare. Paternity leave was unheard of. The gold standard for professional success was 9 to 5. The flexibility of the gig economy was a fairy tale. In the last 50 years, women have carved their own way to achieving better balance for success and personal lives. By returning the matter of abortion policy to the state, we allow a stunted debate on how we support women to flourish. It's time for the court to let go of its hold on their prior precedent. Woo, all right, so that's a spicy one. Let's see what everybody has to say about this one. Let's see if we've got any questions coming in from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. On our Locals exclusive form, we have another one here from Three Girlies. That was for the last segment. I think I'm missing somebody from Thunder 7. We got journalist Panda here saying, have you seen the video of Pelosi saying that Roe versus Wade will never be overturned? It's too much political power for the Dems. I have not seen that video, but I do believe it. We have Sharon says, Roe was a very bad ruling, kind of like Dred Scott. Unborn children are human beings. That's all there is to say. Just take a look at embryology, tells the whole story. The horror of abortion is far worse, in my opinion, than slavery. From Sharon Quidney. Good comment, Sharon. We have Huggin Munnin is here, says, the best thing I've ever heard against abortion is if a one-cell bacteria on Mars is considered life, why isn't unborn fetus on Earth? Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Let's see what else we've got coming in. We have a no name on this one. Says abortion is up to 12 weeks, 11 weeks, about 6 days in Norway. But we do have medical courts that can decide abortion at a later date. It's about 600 yearly cases in Norway. Yeah, it's small number, a lot more than that here. And and shout out to Norway. Shout out to Norway. Oh my gosh, I would love to go visit that part of the world at some point in my day, but probably not going to be this year. We have Sharon Quidney says, I'm really passionate about this issue. A woman's right to choose means a right to choose to murder somebody. Women's health, pregnancy is not a disease. The overwhelming majority of abortions are because of failed contraception. If people would just be responsible, it would be a better world. That's from Sharon Quidney. Good comment, Sharon. You know, I agree with that. I think if people took a little bit more personal responsibility, things would be a lot better across the board. Peely Wheelie is here, says, what would they say if it was a girl transgender that now really wants to live life as a guy? Can she get an abortion? Nobody wants to hurt those sensitive feelings after all, Rob. Yawn. I can't keep track of it, actually. Can a girl transgender living as a guy have an abortion? I mean, biologically, right? Probably, maybe. I don't know. Thunder 7 says, Rob, it appears to me that the Dems keep pushing the abortion needle, literally allowing partial birth abortions. It won't be long before they will allow killing a newborn, as long as it's within a minute or two. And I think I saw an actual article about that one time. It's called like infanticide, right? It's actually a thing. Honestly, if they celebrate the death of babies, it's very dark. Why not allow individual states to pass their own abortion laws and keep their beliefs, whether it be for or against? Why do Dems insist that only their viewpoints be allowed? Good question, Thunder 7. And that's exactly what Fitch is saying. Attorney General Fitch from Mississippi. She's saying, listen, what you created, court, this right to abortion, you just created out of whole cloth, out of thin air, came out of nowhere. It's not in the Constitution. You don't get to create it out of this penumbra of rights that exists out of other, parts of the Constitution. There's a lot you could dive into on this case, no doubt about it. And we did in law school. But that's what Attorney General Fitch is arguing. She's saying if you bring this back down to the state level, if you make it so that it's not a constitutional right anymore, then the states can regulate it. And people can get up and move around wherever they want to go. If you want to go live in an abortion-friendly state, pick up and go to California. If you don't, go to Mississippi, right? That's kind of one of the things that's kind of neat about the country is you've got this laboratory, the states, I think Sandra Day O'Connor called them laboratories of democracy. Let the different states work through some of these issues, see what works, what doesn't work, pick the best ones, and let the country decide rather than letting Washington decide or letting judges decide, because that's not democracy, right? That's sort of we elect officials who appoint other officials who get life tenure, and then they get to make decisions for us. And you go, all right, well, that's a social issue, but the countervailing argument is that, no, it's constitutional. It's my body, my choice, and I have the right to do whatever I want with it. So that standard should be set across the country is how that argument goes. We have Sharon says, If a woman has a right to kill her baby because it's inconvenient, then why don't I have the right to go over and shoot my next door neighbor because she parks where I don't like her to park? Don't do that, Sharon. Just because other people are having abortions, don't do that. But I understand your point, right? Their response to you would be, yeah, but it's not a human being. It's not a life. That person was alive. This thing wasn't. That's their argument. I know. All right, let's see what else is up. This is spicy topic. Great analysis of a complex issue from Sergeant Bob, and Miss Lucky is here too. Well, thank you, Sergeant Bob. You know, it's a complicated one, and it tends to invoke a lot of energy, doesn't it? Good to see you guys. Nadarb is here, says, right now is the perfect time to use their vaccine lunacy against them and say, I'm sorry, but your my body, my choice card was revoked this year after you've been a complete hypocrite over agreeing with forcing COVID-19 vaccines on people against their will. And then I think we got 4 ha-has there, which is some serious laughter, which I support that. That's actually, it's actually very, very funny. And I've seen some of that, right? My body, my choice. Don't tell me to inject that. And the response to that has been, well, it's not the same thing. If you don't take the vaccine, well, then you could go out there and you could kill somebody. That's different than abortion. And all of the people who are sort of, pro-life are going, did you just hear yourself? You said if I go out there with COVID and without a vaccine, you're concerned that I might kill somebody. Are you listening? You are advocating for killing people in a woman's body. So it's kind of, you can have a lot of fun with that. Oh, we have a super chat just came in. That was from Pro Player 2000, says, from a former fetus. Hello from Illinois. Hello. I'm glad you're with us. I'm a former fetus too. I think there are many of us in the chat. We've got 679 former fetuses here. And then on locals, another several dozen over there. So, wow. All right. We have things in common, my friends. We all made it here. Ghost Gunners in the house says that abortion is such a heinous and unnecessary, cruel act. Condoms are cheap, even free in some places. You're old enough to have intercourse with other people. Use your head. On another note, they think my 3 days of waiting is unconstitutional. Guess I'll have to figure out who to sue next time I get delayed at my FFL. Oh, that's a good point, right? That's a good point. If they're going to make you wait for your firearm, kind of an undue burden on your Second Amendment rights, isn't it? We have Want to Know says, how do we keep the back alley abortions from happening? Rich can always fly to another country. A lot of women ended up severely injured when abortions aren't an option. Right? It's a good. I think it's a good question. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I think that a lot of people would probably say that it should be criminalized, which that's a whole nother complicated issue, which we'll skip today. Drearier Spider says, while I would agree with SCOTUS overturning Roe and Casey, does anyone not realize this court is too cowardly? Look at the election cases and the Obamacare decisions. I totally agree with that, Drearier Spider. I don't think that they're going to do it. I really don't. I think that they're way too interested in preserving their sort of progressive credentials that they're not going to do that. We have It's Ed says, Rob, fingers looking good, buddy. I'm on the mend, Ed. It's working out well. I actually was able to, throw some weights around today. Not too much trouble. Says, I missed that part of U.S. history where they outlined the part of the Constitution that gives the U.S. Supreme Court to determine what is or not considered a life. Can you point that section out to me there? I don't think it's in there. Ed, read it a few times. Don't recall that definition of when something becomes life. Your point is well taken. John Finch stated, and later reiterated by O.W. Holmes, says, quote, your right to swing your arm leaves off where my right to not have my nose struck begins. I support women's rights and people's rights to do with their body as they please, so long as the cost of said decisions are not placed on anyone else. Murdering a baby is a clear cost on another person when the woman makes that decision with her body. I pray 50 years from now we look back and think of abortion the same way we look back and think of slavery and Jim Crow laws, looking at it with total disgust. It's a powerful comment, Ed. Thank you for that. And I know a lot of people agree with you on that. And the court is primed and ready to sort of, I think regardless of where you stand on the issue, what the court did legally was inappropriate. And I like the framework of sending this back down to the states. I think that will be a good way to let local governments sort through this stuff rather than setting a standard because it is such a volatile issue. We have another one with no question. Says ADD meds require the prescription be hand delivered to the pharmacy and no refills are allowed. I'd love to have the same right to medical integrity as a woman choosing to abort on demand. I didn't know that about ADD meds. That's interesting. Yeah, because they're essentially amphetamines, aren't they? Many of them. So that makes sense, but it's an interesting take there. And when you start playing that sort of compare and contrast game, you can really have a lot of fun taking that logically to the end of the world. We have Leafy Bug in the house, says, isn't it competitive federalism to the model? Some states are going to accept this, some aren't. After having children, I am personally a lot less tolerant of abortion. Interesting. So that's from Leafy Bug. So you noticed your perspectives changed a little bit. Let's see what else is coming in here. We have a couple more before we wrap up for the day. Leafy Bug also says, with our last child, we were offered a test to see if the baby had Down syndrome. The implication being that we could abort her if she did. That revolted me. Of course, we did not get the test. She's lying right next to me right now, 7 months old, perfectly healthy. Cannot imagine doing something like that to her. That's from Leafy Bug. Leafy Bug, that comment hits home, my friend. I have a Down syndrome brother, Joey. He is 34 years old, going to be 35, September 20th. Amazing young man. He actually works around the office, helps me keep my fridge full, and does some little odds and ends around the office. He was in the hospital for 48 days last summer with COVID. He is the biggest blessing on the planet. I love him to death. And I'm very, very grateful that he's here. I don't know if my mom had that conversation with their doctor at the time, but I'm glad that she did not make the decision, and I'm glad you didn't either. Amazing. All right, we have another one from Jeremy Matrita. Says, Rob, excellent coverage of the article and the topic. As an adult male who wishes to maintain good standing with women, I fully support a woman's choice and do not agree with the government getting involved. Human reproduction has nothing to do with rationality and everything to do with survival instinct. I am man enough to admit 2 times in my life I faced the question of whether to abort. Second time, I was much older and wiser and supported my partner in whatever her choice would be and secretly prayed she would make the right choice. Showing support allowed her to make the rational choice, but I had to allow her to come to that conclusion on her own. Man, Jeremy Matrita, man, what a comment. Thank you for that. That is vulnerability, man, for just coming out there and typing that down and submitting that and having me read that on the show. I'm honored to have you share that with me, and to have been able to share that on this channel and on this show. I'm honored for that because it's a very complex issue, and it's very easy to take these things and realize that, our lives are integrated with other people and that everybody should do everything that we do and that there's only one right way and that everything has to be dictated and even and mandated across the board. And it's complicated, man. And that is you had some difficult questions to work your way through. And I'm grateful you shared that with us. Man, that's powerful stuff. Okay, we have Bumma Lick It now. So we go from that to Bumma Lick It, which is one of the best usernames that we have. No, I can't read that. Bumma Lick It. All right, so we've got No Doubt says, no waiting period on abortion with a guaranteed kill, yet they want a waiting period for a gun that will most likely not hurt anyone. Yes, it is that just outstanding contradiction. We have 3 Girlies says, I believe Roe versus Wade was wrongly decided. I believe it's the states' rights issue. States are responsible for all vital statistics, such as birth, death, marriage. States decide personal crimes such as murder, rape, assault charges for their citizens. States should have the right to make abortion laws at the state level, right? So we talk about all of these other issues, birth, death, crime, murder, rape, all of those things. It's a very, very good point, right? It's sort of consistency. We're going to have a pattern of consistency. Justice Thomas has been laying the groundwork in legal reviews for a while. It's going to take the states to pick up the breadcrumbs and bring it to court. Mississippi is the first to use the breadcrumbs Thomas has laid out for everyone. Yeah. And so very astute observation, 3 Girlies, right? This is often what happens is it takes years and decades to lay the legal framework. And Mississippi now is sort of, asking that question. Is there anything we can do at all? Any possible ability to limit pre-viability? It's a big question. And it's going to be one that the court's going to really have to grapple with, and I'm curious to see where it goes. But you're right, Thomas, and there are others who have been on this train for a long time. Let's see. We have Jeremy says, to clarify my response, abortion has a lot to do with the man and whether he makes the woman believe that she will be taken care of and safe. Ooh, yeah, okay, so another addition there, right? It takes 2 to do the deed. It takes 2 to raise a child. It takes, well, my mom raised me, so maybe it doesn't take 2. We have, but I appreciate your comment there, Jeremy. And it is it is something that I think is very important to have a real serious conversation about. And the fact that you're sharing that with us is just, it's amazing. We have Nia Darb says, in all seriousness, I think that it should be up to the states, but I don't think that the state has any right to claim interest in protecting the baby until the baby can survive out of the womb. And so that's kind of what the court said. Yeah. Doctors say 22 weeks is the earliest age when the baby's viable or able to survive outside of the womb. Leave it to the states, and you can only get an abortion for the first 20 weeks or 4 months, which is more than enough time to find out you are pregnant. Yeah. And so the question would then become, is there a limiting principle to that? Is there anything that would stop a state from basically saying that abortions are just outright prohibited? That is what Attorney General Fitch's request would allow, in my opinion, right? If the Supreme Court comes out and says, yes, there are certain pre-viability prohibitions that are allowed, the next question is what? And then the question after that, is there any limit to that? Like, can a state just ban them outright? If Attorney General Fitch gets her way, the answer is yes, I think. Farmer's Daughter says, I had a friend who worked with PP. She quit because there was no counseling to discourage it. PP being, I think, Planned Parenthood. They simply schedule the appointment. Same with gender dysphoria. Let's cheer them on instead of offering viable options. Yes, there is some of that, right? There are people out there that sort of celebrate an abortion, and I've seen memes and screenshots and stuff like that. And people, they're on their 3rd, 4th, 5th abortions. It's like, okay, it's not contraception, my friends. It's not that. That I think we can be pretty clear about. It's Ed says, right on about Joey. My cousin Hector has Down syndrome. He's the happiest person I know. I love hanging out with him. He is special to me. I'm glad my aunt didn't abort him, even though the doctor tried to pursue her to. Yeah, I know, man. Down syndrome people are just, they are such a gift. And I just, people with Down syndrome, oh my gosh. Is that I think I'm allowed to say that, right? Can I use those words? I think I have license because I actually have a Down syndrome brother. It's very complicated now. All right. We have John Delar is here, says, just want to say I really enjoy and look forward to your show. And thanks, John Delar. I appreciate it too, man. And I really look forward to spending time with you. I learn a lot. I think we have great conversations, and it's really a lot of fun and very rewarding, and I really appreciate it. Three Girlies is here, says, fun facts, Ralph Northam, governor of Virginia, went so far as to say that the mother and the doctor could determine if the child would live past being born. Infanticide, that's what it was. You nailed it. Yeah, it was Governor Northam of Virginia. I do recall that. I remember them talking about this. Right. And the way that they do these things is just horrific. Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone, the bishop in Pelosi's hometown, has denied her communion for her stance on abortion. She professes to be a devout Catholic, yet says and believes what she does on abortion. And those were great questions, great comments. I think we got one more in. John Delar says, this generation is a pretty good argument for birth control. All right. It's a good way to end it on a Friday. It's yes, great questions. All of those were a lot of fun over from Watching the Watchers, .locals.com. Let's give us some shout outs over to YouTube. We got some people who are chiming in over there. We've got Christine. We've got Marcia Jones, Bloodhound, Terry. We got Mez in the house. Kenneth Reeder says, horrible Bloodhound. And others are over there. Thunder 7, Farmer's Daughter, Baranski, Arctuarians. We've got Want to Know, Thunder 7. They're all over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And once again, my friends, I really do appreciate all the support from you supporting us there at our community. I want to welcome one newcomer, Truman HW signed up. Let's go back over there. Truman HW signed up for our community at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Very, very, very grateful for that. We had a super chat just came in right now from Pro Player 2000, says, thanks for being you. We're going to see that on the screen here in a minute. So thank you for that, Pro Player. Really do appreciate that. And let's see what else is here. Oh, yes. Yeah, so if you are, there it is, Pro Player. Thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate it. And if you want to sign up and be a part of the community, it's watchingthewatchers.locals.com right down here. $5 a month, $50 for the year. We have a monthly meetup. Oh my goodness, it's happening tomorrow. And the link is available at the post right now. At the latest post, you can sign up. The registration form is there if you've not already done so. If you have, you should be already getting the reminder. We're going to meet tomorrow via Zoom, July 24th at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And it's a lot of fun. This is going to be month number 3. the last 2 months, we've had a handful, we had more than that. We had like 35, 40 people come through. We talked to people from all over the world, from people with all different professions. We have, police officers, firefighters. We have a lot of just amazing people. So it's a lot of fun. It's very informal. I don't really have anything prepped. Thoughts, suggestions, comments, ideas, criticisms. If you want to flip me off, come do it. It's no problem. No FBI agents. You're not invited. Not allowed in there. But if you want to keep your camera off, that's okay too. It's all right because we're all just trying to get to know each other and build a little bit of a community over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We would love it if you joined us over there. All right, my friends. Well, that is it from me for the day. I want to thank you all so much for being here, being a part of the show. Had a lot of fun this week. Thanks for bearing with me on the new studio. I'm going to be sinking some work in there. You can see the walls getting a little bit better. It's not as bad because I put some spackle on there yesterday. And so I'm going to be working on that. Probably still not going to be done for the next week or so, but we're going to get there. And the show will continue on in spite of the construction. And I hope you do join us next week for that and more. So everybody, have a tremendous weekend. Remember to get some rest, have a nice hearty meal. We did a lot of work this week, and we need to take a little bit of a break from politics because we want to make sure that our energy tanks are refilled and we're rocked and ready to go on Monday. Everybody, I'll see you right back then at that time, 4 p.m. Arizona time, 5 p.m. Central Mountain Time, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. on the East Coast. And for that one Florida man, everybody else, have a tremendous weekend. I'll see you right back here on Monday, unless I see you tomorrow at our Zoom meetup. I'll see you then. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. Before you head out, I want to just remind you that I am a criminal defense lawyer here in Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and we've got a long history of helping good people facing criminal charges to find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases and beyond that in their lives. Our phone number for a free case evaluation is 480-787-0394. You can also find us online at www.rrlawaz.com. We can help with any type of criminal charge in the state of Arizona. Things like DUI, drug offenses, misdemeanor offenses. And we can also help with clearing up old case records, like expunging cases or making sure that you can restore your rights so that you can vote again or possess a firearm again or apply for some other federal benefits. We can remove mugshots off the internet. Basically, anytime that you or somebody you know or love is in trouble with the law in the state of Arizona, we have an amazing team of people. We would just love the opportunity to help. And our phone number, of course, 480-787-0394. And if you don't need any legal services, that's a very good thing, but you may be interested in some informational offerings so that you are prepared if you do have to deal with the police. And of course, I want to invite you to head on over to gumroad.com/Robert Gruler. You'll notice here, I've got several different trainings that are available, including the law enforcement interaction training. This is the 1, 2, 3 rule for dealing with the police. It's one rule you need, 2 questions that the police can ask of you, and 3 responses if they ask you a problematic question. So that's available now. You can also get a load at my personal productivity system here called Existence Systems. Fun little course. And then we have here, if you're a lawyer or a legal professional, be sure to check out this program. We are meeting twice every month. Again, all of this over at gumroad.com/Robert Gruler. And if none of that sounds any good to you, well, just go ahead and give us a follow because I'm working on some other products and some other offerings. And of course, if you have not already done so, want to invite you one more time to head on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. It's where you can support the show and it's where we can connect. We've got monthly Zoom meetings and a lot of other goodies coming up. So I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much for watching and for all of your love and support. I will see you on the next one.